So good morning and thank you for joining the Eagle Mountain Mining October Investor Webinar. I'm Jane Morgan, the Investor and Media Relations Manager. Today, I am joined by Eagle Mountain Mining's CEO, Tim Mason, and Chief Geologist, Fabio Vergara. Tim and Fabio will expand on yesterday's announcement regarding drilling at Golden Eagle, which confirmed 2 separate mineralized zones. We will also be taking questions from webinar attendees. So to ask a question throughout the presentation, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen. Tim, I'll pass to you.
Yeah, no worries. Thanks very much, Jane, and thanks for everybody who's tuning in. Look, I know we're all very busy, so we'll keep this fairly brief, but we're really excited by what we've seen and what we announced yesterday. So it was certainly worthwhile to have a bit of a webinar, and it is a bit technical as well. So I'm excited to say that Fabio Vergara, very well-esteemed geologist, is joining. So I'll give a brief presentation, introduction, and then I'll hand over to Fabio, who's our chief geologist, to go through what all this exactly means. So for those of you who don't know, just really quickly, we purchased Oracle Ridge. We own 100% of it. It's a high-grade project of modest sort of size at this stage in Arizona. And what we really saw as the potential when we bought the project was the scale, the potential to make this a whole lot bigger than what's currently there. I think what we've sort of renounced yesterday is really just another stepping stone in order to define what that scale looks like. It was mined back in the mid-90s at a fairly modest rate, and our strategy at the moment is to grow our resources. That is entirely what we're focused on trying to do. We've recently gone up to 3 drill rigs, which are drilling on a full-time basis. So there's a lot of activity happening on the mine. The exploration, we've been getting some great results in the Talon, but we've also been expanding the existing resource. We're doing a modest amount of work on upgrading the resource, but then we've also had a drill out, drilling these things that could be the step change opportunities around the project, which is quite similar to what you get, in the districts around us. And Fabio's got some good plans later on, which shows some of the similarities of what we've got with some of these other pretty major mining districts in Arizona. So well funded as well. As a lot of you know, we did a capital raising recently. Charlie Bass contributed $1 million worth of that. So he's our managing director. That's a strong sign of confidence from Charlie and one of our largest shareholders. Also, during the last quarter, for those of you who didn't pick up, we had a loan to one of the entities which Charlie's associated with for $1 million US. And that occurred back when the share price was at 8 cents. We didn't want to have to issue equity at those sort of prices. And he contributed, he accepted scrip in lieu of repayment of that loan at a premium to the share price at the time. So look, he's very encouraged by what he sees. And to quote one of his recent quotes, we were talking, he's like saying, "We're in a game park here. There's trees have been knocked down. There's elephant dung around. There's a lot of good signs." So look, on that front, I'll hand over to Fabio, who can run you through what we've seen in the drilling from the Golden Eagle area in particular.
All right, thanks, Tim. So I'll jump straight in, trying to provide some context about where we are. So this is a 3D view of the Oracle Ridge project area. And as you can see, there is a marble mountain here at the top, which is actually the limestone, the geology that overlies the main mine area where we are currently drilling with three rigs. The portals are out here to the right, mine buildings there. And Golden Eagle itself sits about 2 kilometers to the east, so down from the main elevation, down here in the flatlands, essentially, right next to another project that we're trying to develop, which is OREX. As you can see, it sits between the historical tailings dam that is down here, that is currently closed, and the mine itself, and importantly, sits right on the access road. So in terms of access, it's really easy. It's actually easier than the mine itself. If we look at the same area, but in plan view, that's how it looks like. And basically, the orange or yellow you see here is the outline of the existing MRE. And again, Golden Eagle sits right here, 2 kilometers to the east. I'll highlight it in orange here. It's a number of new tenements that we staked recently. And the idea was we were interested and very excited from some of the preliminary work that was done at surface without even prior to drilling. So we decided to expand the land holding in that area. The recent announcement, as you know, talks about the drilling, but clearly we did a lot of work before that to bring up the project and develop it. And that included clearly data compilation and research of historical information. We did a magnetic survey over the area, trying to understand the response for some of these rocks and see if they were telling us something about the geology. And then, of course, geological mapping and sampling. And that's where I want to start. So we'll have a brief look at the results of the geological mapping and sampling. And then you'll see how that basically has been essentially confirmed by the recent drilling. So moving forward, on the right-hand side of this slide, you have a pretty busy map of the Golden Eagle area. And this one was prepared on the back of the geological mapping, so only surface work. There's only a couple of things I want to point out. The first one is all these black lines that go in an east-west direction. These are structures, faults. Essentially, when you want to think about them and how they can be important for mineral deposits, essentially the metals move around the rocks in fluids, in water, essentially, very hot water with other elements. And they need a plumbing system, and the structures represent these plumbing systems quite often. So we were excited to see that, a lot of structural complexity, which we liked. And then from the mapping, we identified two systems. One was what we now call the Gold Ridge system, or system number one. And that one had a few characteristics. The first one, as you can see here in yellow, there was a geological contact. So rocks on the north side of this contact are different from rocks on the south side. Another interesting observation from the geophysics that we did was that subparallel to that contact, there is a bit of a corridor that you can see here highlighted in red, basically a magnetic high. And even more interestingly, spatially associated with this magnetic high at surface, we could see a lot of high-grade surface samples with really high gold. And some of them are listed on the left. So you can see up to 35.3 grams per ton gold with silver and copper, with silver credits. Some of them also had copper. They're not listed here. And finally, icing on the cake, along the same trend, we also have a historical mine called the Sanderson mine, which was in production, very small scale, in the 30s and 40s. And we have production records. So all things pointed to a system that was clearly gold rich and interestingly at a strike extent if you use the mag of over 2 kilometers. That was not only it, there was also a second system just to the south that it's what we now call polymetallic vein system. That surface had an alteration zone. So essentially alteration means that when the fluids that contain the metals go through the rocks, they change the chemistry of the rock, and you can see it. And that's what we geologists call alteration. So the footprint, the alteration footprint of that system at surface is about 1 kilometer, with a core that is roughly half of that, next to a structure, a fault that we call the pigeon tank fault. So clearly we were quite interested. Two systems, both seem very, very exciting. Easy access. So we thought, well, let's drill this and see what we can find. And that's exactly what we did. So we have completed 13 holes at Golden Eagle, and the rig has recently demobilized from Golden Eagle and has moved back up the mountain. We have received assays for complete assays for 2 holes and partial assays for 1 hole, with the remaining 10 holes and a half essentially still outstanding. And clearly the visuals are quite interesting, and that's why we're here talking about them today. Now, let's look at essentially a similar map to the one I showed you before, but instead of looking at the surface geology, this is trying to represent the drilling, the geology that we saw in the drilling. And again, we found the 2 systems that we identified from surface continue at depth. So the gold system here again is highlighted in that brownish color. We confirmed its extent in drilling. It's about 650 meters along strike and remains completely open at depth, as you can see from the arrows here, and also to the west. If we look at a section, so essentially we're slicing now the geology in a vertical way along this blue line here. If we look at that, essentially that's how it looks. So these are the drill holes coming down. And as you can see at the bottom here, we have hole 1 and hole 3 that intersected. First of all, good alteration, and I'll show you how it looks in a second. And in red, also good mineralization with a zone in hole 3 of 21.2 meters at 1.9 grams per ton gold, with also a higher grade zone of 8 meters at 3.8 grams per ton gold with some minor copper credits. Now, as you can see, this seems to be open at depth here, and we haven't drilled anything underneath, and it's also open to the west. How does that look? That's how it looks. You know, sometimes geologists are a bit weird. They get excited for rocks, and this is definitely a very interesting intersection. Just want to point out two things. So the red you see here is hematite, so essentially iron oxide, similar to what the big guys are mining up in the Pilbara. And as you can, wherever you see the red, there's gold. So that's definitely a good sign. And also on the right-hand side here, you see what we geologists call a breccia. So essentially the rocks have been crushed and milled by geological events. And what you can see is white fragments. There are essentially the clasts, and then a darker matrix around them, which is actually still the same hematite that you see on the left-hand side. And even that breccia carries gold. So a very clear system, to very easily identifiable one, and we have seen this across multiple holes at Golden Eagle. Now, the second system, the polymetallic vein system, going back to the plan view, as you can see in orange here, sits slightly to the south, and it's has been confirmed in drilling over 500 meters strike length, is completely open to the west and at depth. And what we can see in the drilling is also a gradient. So it seems like both alteration intensity and also the veining increases from east to west. So essentially, we want to see what's happening over here and also at depth. What do we see there? Essentially, as the name suggests, we see veins that contain lead, zinc, and copper sulfides. That's why we call it polymetallic vein system. And they are associated with an alteration that includes disseminated pyrite and essentially a lot of quartz that pervades the entire rock volume. So interesting things. And as we did before, sorry, I'll jump back 1 second. If we look at the slide, at a section along this blue line here, that's how it looks. So again, drilling, starting from the top here and going down, we intersected about 200 meters of alteration with localized veining, like the one you see on the left-hand side, where the silvery looking mineral is actually galena, so lead sulfide. And because we knew that the second system or the gold-rich system continued also to the west, we extended the drill hole further down, and we intersected the extension of that system also in this drill hole, and remain open when we had to stop the hole down here. So quite exciting. Now, what does it all mean? I'll get to that in a second. I'll show you some other photos of rocks first. So on the right-hand side here, there is a nice specimen of galena. So as I said, lead sulfide, then silica pyrite, and also on the left-hand side, another silica pyrite vein. You can see the gold-looking mineral is actually pyrite. So all of these things are very interesting, and clearly they do have a meaning, and that's what I think the most important part of the discussion is going to come in. So what can they mean? To try and explain it, what I'll do, I'll show you another section. Essentially, we are slicing again the geology there along this blue line, and the section that I'm going to show you, it's not a true section, it's a conceptual section. So it's a section that we use as a way of interpreting the geology and trying to put everything together. Now, let's start from the left-hand side, top left. You see Oracle Ridge. Now, Oracle Ridge is the main target we're drilling at the moment. It sits up here on the mountain. As you can see, there's a lot of orangey-looking blobs that represent the mineralization that we have at Oracle Ridge with its potential extension. Now, the mineralization at Oracle Ridge sits on a mountain, and the mountain basically is sitting on top of another rock type called leatherwood, which is essentially an intrusive. Think about a granite. And there is a correlation between the granite and the mineralization we see. Now, below the granite, below the leatherwood, there is another area that we consider highly prospective for skarn mineralization, which is what we call oryx, that sits just under the leatherwood. And if you look back at our announcements, essentially that's progression. We started Oracle Ridge, focused in sort of near mine expansion. Oryx was the second one, and then Golden Eagle, and that's what you see on the right-hand side. And that Golden Eagle, we're trying to represent essentially the polymetallic vein system here with its depth extension potential, and also the gold system here at the eastern end of the section. Now, how can we pull it all together? Let's look at this. Okay, so we have the skarn sitting up here. That's where we have the mine area and the main MRE at the moment. There is another skarn target, which is the oryx target. And then there is also the polymetallic vein system. Now, why are these interesting? Because essentially we are in a part of the world in Arizona where there's a lot of porphyries around. And porphyries don't just come as the bulk tonnage, low-grade mineralization that we're all familiar with. They also come with a number of other styles and types of mineralization associated with them, what we would call sort of satellite deposits. So the current interpretation, and again, if you look back at some of the previous announcements we made, we've always thought that the skarns are linked to a porphyry. What we're thinking now is that even the polymetallic vein system at Golden Eagle is potentially linked to that porphyry there. Now, we don't know where it is. We don't know how big it is. We don't know how endowed it is. But I think we're finding evidence that the porphyry could be there. And that's what's really exciting. And icing on the cake, we also have a gold system, a Golden Eagle, that we currently interpret to be separate from the polymetallic vein and the main porphyry system. We interpret it to be younger, but clearly we have very limited information at the moment. But the idea is we have all this big porphyry with skarn and polymetallic veins, and on top of that, we also have gold potential. So quite interesting. And just to give you a bit of a flavor of what happens in the region, let's have a look at some of the other big porphyry systems around Arizona. Let's start with the Pima mining district, which is, as you can see on the left-hand side, that's a map of southwestern Arizona. Oracle Ridge is there in red, and we're basically seeing a geological map of the area highlighted in black. Now, the Pima mining district is interesting because there's 4 main porphyries. As I said, large tonnage, low grade copper moly deposits. But around them, there's lots of skarns, and that's what they are, right? There's dozens of them all around them. And these are essentially equivalent to what we have at Oracle Ridge with the copper mineralization hosted by the skarn. Not only that, we also have a lot or many polymetallic veins, which were mined historically. Again, dozens of them. So as you can see, there is a very clear spatial correlation between the porphyries, the skarn, and the polymetallic veins, which is essentially what I tried to illustrate before when we looked at that section. And in a similar way, if we look at a true elephant in Arizona, Resolution, which again, from the map on the left-hand side, sits about 100 km to the north of Oracle Ridge, where the black square is. That's again an aerial view of the Resolution porphyry zone. Now, the porphyry itself, or the surface projection of the mineralization, is this bean-shaped dashed line here. So that's the 1% copper shell. And as you can see, all around it, there's a number of structures that are mineralized. Veins with mines as well. So the Belmont mine, this is the Monarch vein, Silver King mine, other deposits like Superior East, and also magma, which is a very, very large mine that was sort of mined historically, that now is believed to be associated with the main system resolution. So as you can see again, porphyry here and a lot of these other systems around it, similar to what we see at Oracle Ridge. So in essence, I think what we're trying to explain here is that we're seeing at Oracle Ridge more and more evidence that there could be a big system under there. And that system is exciting, not only because we could potentially find a porphyry, but also because, as I've just shown you, if you have a big driver down there, a big engine, you know that you can find lots of mineralization. So the potential to find more skarn, the potential to find more polymetallic vein is definitely increased by this interpretation. So finally, just to wrap up, what are we going to do at Golden Eagle going forward? So as you know, we have a lot of assays outstanding and we have to wait for them. The labs have been very slow, unfortunately, but that's life in 2021 in Arizona. And once we receive them, we'll also refine our geological interpretation. We'll most likely, we haven't decided yet, but we could be doing additional geophysics to fine tune our targeting. Then we'll develop the drill targets and then finally drill them and see if we can find more of this gold and also these polymetallic veins. And that's it. Thank you for your attention, and any questions?
Thanks, Fabio. If you do have a question, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of the screen.
Just while we wait there, Jane, if anyone has any questions, I'll just elaborate a bit on probably why we're so excited in our drilling strategy. It's hopefully Fabio's been able to show that scale potential, similarities to other projects in the area, and that's really what has got us excited in the first place. Charlie Bass worked at Twin Buttes, which is that district which Fabio just pointed out, and he sees a lot of similarities of what was there and now what we're seeing up here, and possibly that we're sitting on one of those districts. From a drilling strategy, yeah, we're really frustrated by the assays being slow. It's a bit strange. Some of them have been relatively quick in the past. We've expedited quite a few of ours, and we pay a bit more for that to occur. But we've had some which have been expedited. We've been waiting over 6 weeks now, so that's really frustrating. But from looking at where we think we're at, we should be starting to get a whole lot more through quite soon. Overall, there's 24 holes in the lab which we're waiting on assays. 3 rigs are still going to keep on drilling, so the results will still keep on coming through. We'll keep a couple of rigs drilling on that extension to the existing skarn. That is a real priority for us, but like I said earlier, we'll have another rig which will be able to understand the geology more. Some of these holes, and what you've got to do is you've got to drill for geology to understand exactly where you are in the system, and so we'll be able to do that, and certainly hopefully we hit some good things along the way. But as I said before, this is elephant country here, so there's potential for a lot more to be found. It might be skarn, it might be polymetallic system, it might be a gold system, or it might be something even the deeper feeder system at this stage. But we're not out there hunting for porphyries. We're understanding the system, and again, like Fabio said, a lot of these other mines have these other styles of deposits which are mined in their own right, and they're quite decent, good mines as well.
Thanks for that, Tim. There's a few questions coming through just about the additional rigs coming onto site. Do you want to just maybe comment on that?
Yeah, look, at this stage, we've got a great relationship with Boart Longyear, who've been fabulous. There's no immediate plans to bring those on, maybe towards the back half of this year, which is something which we had talked about. If not, towards the start of next year. We've got to build up the targets, and we've got to, I guess where we're at is, there's a limited number of rigs which we can put on the hill. We're probably up to 2 to 3 before we get quite congested. We've been building a whole lot of roads, so we've got to get ourselves in front of ourselves there. And we also want to drill Oryx, which is a really exciting target for us. We were hoping that we'd have the permits for that already. We've got permits in. We've got to go through the Forest Service to get those approvals. So that's probably the opportune time when we get the approvals for Oryx to be able to bring on the additional rigs, and we can have a rig at Golden Eagle, some at Oryx, and then some at the mine as well.
One probably for you, Fabio. So how are you going to target the deep porphyry concept? Through geophysics or drilling?
Yeah, so I think at the moment what we're doing, we're essentially trying to look at two things: the structures that we have in the area, and then we're also looking at geochemistry. So essentially, when we receive the assays, we have a look at things like metal ratios, trying to find out if they are vectoring us towards a certain way. We are also using PIMA, so the portable infrared analyzer, to try and define some of the minerals a bit better, because porphyries especially have a very clear alteration footprint, and we're trying to find out if by using these advanced techniques we can find it, and we can try to trace it down and use all of these in combination clearly with our current understanding that keeps evolving. Geophysics could also play a role. I mean, there's some deep geophysics that could be done. Could do ZTEM, potentially IP as well. But I think at this stage we're focusing a bit more on the geochemical side.
Thank you. Just another one through. So does the gold system appear to pre or post-date porphyry system, the potential porphyry system?
Okay. Yeah, I think I touched briefly during the presentation about it, and it's very early days, so we don't have a final answer about it. If I have to answer the question, I would say it's probably post. So it seems to be post-dating some of the other dikes in the area that are actually quite young, but that's based only on a couple of observations in very, very local, in very, very specific places. So I think essentially we don't know, but at the moment, personally, I think it's post.
And just any thoughts about using seismic survey to understand the structures underground?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. We are thinking about seismic as well. We have. I mean, I've been involved, not directly, but I've dealt with HiSeis, some of the companies that are in that space, and have been for many years. And I'm still in touch with them. So we keep considering there's some challenges around terrain and actually cost, of course. So we need to decide exactly where we want to spend our money. So we haven't made a decision yet, but it could be a possibility in the future. Yes.
Wonderful. Well, that looks like that's all the questions. So thank you for joining us today for the Eagle Mountain Mining October Investor Webinar. Should we have missed any questions, please feel free to reach out via the contact details on the bottom of our ASX releases. Thank you all for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.